Hello everyone, it's Alex Caputo-Pearl, the UTLA President, coming to you again from my dining room and with my cell phone to get a text from the UTLA Communications Department to make sure that the audio and the video are okay. So let me ask, is it okay? This is how we do things from the dining room of the Caputo-Pearl household. Okay. We've got a yes, the thumbs up. Okay, so we are here on, this is Wednesday, and I first want to just start off with saying that Justin, our great interpreter, is going to be on after this. We're really trying to practice the social distancing stuff, and so to be in the frame with me, Justin has to be, we've got to be close to each other. And so we don't want to do that. So he's going to do his own video following this one with interpretation. Okay? So Justin, who does the ASL, is going to do that. So that's awesome. I did get some comments last night that the baskets looked a little bit weird behind me. So I've rearranged the baskets. So hopefully they're looking good. I was a little bit distracted yesterday because I couldn't tell what was more distracting to me, whether it was my daughter, who is right there, laughing at posts that she was seeing people put up, or whether that was more distracting, or my son deciding to take a shower in the middle of the Facebook Live, and our shower makes a little bit of a loud noise, so you might have heard that behind. They were distracting, but I hope last night's was good. So we're going to jump into the business here. As usual, I want to start off with a thank you to students, parents, educators, LAUSD workers, all folks around the county. I know this is a very difficult time, and we're going to make it through this. Your educators love you. We love our students. We love our parents that we've been through so much with, and obviously other workers and other UTLA members. And we're going to get through this tough time together. I want to start off with some good news. Last night I talked a little bit about what we were doing with substitute educators, and the substitute elected leadership deserves a lot of credit here. Francisco Martinez and Benny Madera, and Alex Orozco, who is the officer who works with the substitutes, deserves a lot of credit. Jeff Good, our executive director, deserves a lot of credit, and frankly the district, LAUSD, deserves a lot of credit. There's a memo that has been sent out, dated today, March 18th. It is from Megan Reilly. It is about LA Unified Certificated Substitute Pay Fact Sheet. And what the memo explains is that we have the agreement that we were working to, that I explained to you last night. It's actually a better agreement than that. We have the way it's going to work is substitute educators who, whatever percentage of time that they worked up to the closure of schools, they will be paid for that same percentage of time over the course of the closure. Okay? So if they worked 91% of the time before, from August up to the closure, then they'll be paid over the course of the closure as if they were working 91% of the time, okay? Now that's going to be, the memo puts that in terms of hours, so that would be 91% of a 6-hour day that they would be paid on the daily. And the floor that we negotiated, last night I talked about 40% floor. It's actually a 50% floor. So all substitute educators, even if they didn't work 50% of the time from August up to the closure, they will get paid at a minimum as if they're working 3 hours a day, okay, each day. So it's a 50% floor, which is very good. And like I said, frankly, this is good work by the district, and this is a model that other employers should follow. We've got, and it also, other employers across the city, frankly. It also helps other LAUSD workers. So Substitute special education teaching assistants will be helped by this agreement because hopefully they'll get an agreement that's similar. Cafeteria workers who have substitutes will be helped by this agreement because they'll hopefully apply something that's similar to that. Okay? And look, our LAUSD workers are majority workers of color, so this is a racial justice issue as well. This agreement helps move forward the agenda of racial justice. And frankly, this agreement for substitute educators should inspire us, because this is not the kind of agreement that you get. Often in the private sector, an agreement like this would be hard to get. We're lucky we're in the public sector. And this is also not the kind of agreement you get without a union, without a strong union. So this should make us double down on our commitment after we're through this coronavirus crisis, and we will get through it. It should double down on our commitment to expand the public sector, to fight for more social services, more public sector workers, and it should make us double down on our commitment to unionize more workers so that we have much more union density in Los Angeles. It's just good for working families, okay? So we should commit to that. Now, we wanted to address this pay issue first with substitutes, because we knew that was on the top of substitutes' minds. So now that we've got that, now we move on to the threshold questions. We want to lower the threshold for eligibility to health care, and we want to lower the threshold for the eligibility for the continuity rate increase. So now we move on to that. We've already been talking to the district about those, but now we move to get agreements on those, okay? So I'm gonna get a drink of water. My daughter's making faces at me as I'm getting water.
As is your wife.
So, a couple more things. We're going to go through a couple more things. This will be relatively brief. You know, we're headed in a, so I started with some good news. But we all know that we're headed in a rough direction over the next probably few months, or even more than a few months. We know that it's probably going to head to much more rigorous social isolation and much more rigorous shelter in place. Over 20% of California is now in shelter in place. We should expect that that is going to happen, okay? Newsom talked yesterday about perhaps not going back to school for the rest of the academic year. So we're in this for the long haul. We've got to be rigorous about shelter in place and social isolation when it comes to that, because I believe it will come to that. I believe that is what needs to happen. What I can assure you is that if this academic year is over, you will be paid. We will make sure that you are paid, okay? And that's everyone, including substitutes, which we just went over. And again, we should be grateful of being in the public sector and grateful of having a union. Because there are a lot of workers out there, a ton of workers out there, who cannot say that they're going to be paid over the course of the next months. So we are very fortunate. We've fought for it, and we're going to have to fight for everything, but we're also fortunate. And I just want to say again about the substitute issue, good job by LAUSD. LAUSD, by making that substitute agreement I just talked about, can set the pace for other employers of how they should handle working with their workers during this crisis. So I want to say, Newsom also mentioned today that state standardized testing is done. That's not something that's going to happen. Even if we do go back, they will be canceled. So that is good. We started advocating for that. As soon as we started advocating for the closure, UTLA started advocating for that. So that's good. Now, we're educators, right? And educators out there, parents out there, youth out there who are watching, we're going to all have to model rigorous social distancing, okay? Whether it's shelter in place, social distancing, social isolation, etc. We've got to model that, okay? People watch what educators do, so we've got to model that. Our students watch what we do. We've got to be good models of that. That said, there are also essential public services that must continue. And we've just got to be aware of that, okay? And those essential services must continue for a couple of reasons. One, because they're based on people's human rights, right? The second reason that those essential services must continue is because without them continuing, the virus will spread even more. So two crucial reasons that those essential services have to continue. For example, my wife is a labor and delivery nurse. She works in California Hospital, what used to be California Hospital downtown, which serves a very low income population. Every single one of those mothers who comes in has the human right to have their baby in a way that is calm and comforting as possible. So it's a human rights issue, but it's also a stopping the spread of the virus issue. My wife has to go to work each day that she's scheduled to work because of that human rights issue I mentioned, but also because she can work with folks at the hospital to make sure to stop the spread of the virus in those situations of pregnancy, giving birth, etc. So it's crucial for both of those reasons, human rights and to stop the spread of the virus. Think about grocery store workers. I've known the same grocery store worker. I shop at the Albertsons at Crenshaw Boulevard and Martin Luther King, the intersection of Martin Luther King and Crenshaw. And I've known some of those clerks there at the grocery store for 17 years. They've seen my kids grow up and everything. They're great people. They have to work each day that they're scheduled to work during this crisis, even if there is a shelter in place, even if there is a social isolation, because it is a human right to provide food for people, and because if people aren't eating, the virus is going to spread more. So grocery stores have to stay open. Think about our food distribution centers for LAUSD, and I'll talk about this more in a minute. It is essential that we provide food distribution through LAUSD that so many of our members volunteered for, because food is a human right, and because we want folks to be fed, because if folks aren't fed, then they're going to be weakened, and they're going to make them even more susceptible to the virus. And the final example I'll give is today. And I heard some feedback on this over social media, and I take your feedback seriously. There was a housing action today where a group called ACE and a group called Housing Now and a group called Reclaimers, they went to 15 publicly owned houses in El Sereno, 15 publicly owned houses owned by Caltrans. They're vacant. They've been vacant for a decade. And they took over those houses. And I was there, and there was a group of people there, and we helped them make sure to take over those houses. And again, it's based on, it's a human right to have shelter. These are homeless people or people who were living in incredibly crowded quarters, 15 people in a two-room apartment, 5 people in a one-room apartment. So reclaiming these houses is not just a human rights issue, it is also an issue of stopping the spread of the virus. When we're able to spread out in a more reasonable house, we are less likely to spread the virus. So again, it's important on both of those levels. Now, it was an interesting action today because the housing groups that put it together were trying to be very careful about social distancing. There was a group there. It wasn't a huge group, but it was a group more than 10. And they actually had pieces of rope that were 8 feet long, and they made people hold the rope between them to make sure that people were 6 to 8 feet away from each other. So they were really trying to model social distancing at the same time as dealing with this essential human rights and stopping the spread of the virus issue. I was there. Other folks from UTLA were there. We were helping this. We were supporting this. 12 out of those 15 families going into those houses are LAUSD families, families of students who we serve, who we see in the classroom, you know, with the impacts of being homeless or living in an apartment that's way too crowded. So we were there. Now, I got some feedback over social media when we recorded it that at one point when I was on the porch, we were giving a speech from the porch that I was too close to other people. And I take that feedback. And there are going to be instances where, you know, we need to remind ourselves, hey, distance out. So I take that feedback and I appreciate that feedback. But Here's the punchline. The punchline is we're going to need to rigorously model social isolation as educators, shelter in place, and then when we're doing what is essential, whether it be working at a food distribution center, which I'm so proud of our members for doing, or supporting a grocery worker, or anything that is essential, or supporting someone who is homeless. If we're doing that sort of work, essential work for human rights reasons and stopping the virus reasons, we have to still remember to model that social distancing. So good feedback today, and we've just got to very rigorously model that. So 3 last points here, and then we'll be done. Food distribution centers today. 60 of them opened. They were overall quite good. My officer colleagues, my UTLA officer colleagues, and some of our staff and I went around to several of them. We went to 38 out of 60 of them. We've got a great officer team, by the way. Cecily Myart-Cruz, who is the UTLA President Elect, who is awesome. Juan Ramirez, we've got Daniel Barnhart, Gloria Martinez, Alex Orozco, Arlene Inoue, and then we've got our secondary Vice President-elect, Julie Van Winkle. We went around, we generally didn't get out of the car because we didn't want to create any more human interaction than we had to. We basically just drove by the centers to see how they were doing without getting out of the car, without getting close to people. We hit 38 out of 60 of them, and they were quite good, quite well organized, and they were well taken advantage of. My favorite comment was one of the workers looked at me and he said, "Hey, we're here for the kids and we're here for the union." So he sees that our union is pushing on broad social justice issues. We did raise with the district that we're both going to be pressing the city to make sure that every single person at those food distribution centers has a mask. There were some that had masks and some that didn't, so we're pressing on that. And we noticed, and gave some constructive feedback, we noticed that some of those folks at the food distribution centers weren't practicing social distancing in the way that they should. So we're reminding folks of that and making sure that they do that. If you're on the volunteer list, please be patient. They've got an overwhelming number of volunteers, which makes us feel really good. But they might take a while to get to you because they don't need everyone at once, okay? Let me get a drink of water. Okay, so second to last thing here, continuous learning. Our members are doing amazing things. We've got Victor Altamirano from Yes Academy in South LA, who's posting stuff about what he's doing. Lorraine Quinones from Multnomah over on the east side, posting about what she's doing with students online, distant learning. Carmen Padilla from East Valley High School, doing great stuff. Jeanette Duran Aguirre, doing great stuff, teaching the deaf, and showing all that online and doing tutorials and things like that. We're actually going to start a campaign where we are sharing all of that incredible stuff that educators are doing so that you can tutor each other on the best ways to use online stuff, but also show each other how you can engage students even in a crisis time like this. So we got 3 hashtags that when you have something exciting to post about what you're doing with students, obviously be conscious of student privacy. Don't put student faces out there, don't put student names out there. But when you're sharing something cool, do hashtag Shiro at home. That's hashtag Shiro at home. That should show up on the screen here. Or hashtag Hero at home. Hashtag Hero at home. Or hashtag This is my superpower. Hashtag This is my superpower. Okay, so that we can start a whole city dialogue with those 3 hashtags on the great stuff going on. Okay? And I'll end with this, the same way I did last night, that, a lot is being done on the issue of the coronavirus and COVID-19, but more needs to be done. And UTLA has been a leading voice on pushing what needs to be done. So, for example, the federal government announced yesterday that they're working on some way to send checks to people. And that's good because people are going to need money. But it's not far enough. We need a guaranteed basic income for everyone. An income is different from a check. Okay? An income means it's ongoing. We need a guaranteed basic income, and we're going to continue to push for that. There should be no means test on that, and documentation status shouldn't matter. We need a guaranteed basic income for everyone. Second, good things have been happening around stopping evictions, stopping foreclosures, stopping payments, and stopping debt, so that people aren't expected to, pay debts when they're going more into debt, but we're pushing that even more. On housing the homeless, which we've talked about a lot, and UTLA has pushed from the beginning, not only as a human rights issue, but as a way to contain the virus issue. More is happening. We see $150 million was announced today by Governor Newsom to go towards housing the homeless. Garcetti also talked a lot about housing the homeless in LA in his press conference at 5:15 today. And then we've also got Newsom building more space, purchasing more space for hospitals. Okay, so there's some good things happening, but we've got to push it further. There's also some bad things happening that we've got to stop. ICE agents, as recently as yesterday, went into people's homes in Bell Gardens, right here in the LA area, taking advantage of people during the most vulnerable time. It's disgusting. So those ICE raids need to stop. They don't help public health, and they don't help families. So there was an announcement about some of that maybe pivoting away from ICE raids, but we don't think that's enough. We've got to stop those. And finally, I would just say this, that we're seeing economic sectors collapse. We're seeing industries collapse. And we've got to be particularly sensitive to when industries collapse, the status of workers of color. For example, black workers have been overwhelmingly impacted, for example, by the going away of manufacturing in the auto industry and the tire industry and things like that. Black workers were crushed by that in the 1970s and 1980s. It's a reflection of entrenched racism. So as we see economic sectors collapse, we've got to make sure that we're lifting up workers of color and making sure that there is a landing spot. This is all things that we need to be aware of. So we're going to end with that tonight. We are in this together. These are very serious times. Like I said, we are going to rigorously model social distancing. When we get to shelter in place, when we get to social isolation, which if we're not there in the next couple of days, we're going to push for it because we think that's where it needs to go. We're going to rigorously model that, but we're also going to rigorously model being with our students online and continuing to challenge them through the continuity of learning, okay? We love you. We're with you. The educators of LA are with you. Again, I'm sorry. You can see that I did not have a lot of chance to change the clutter in my house between last night and this night. So you're going to have to keep on going with the clutter. But we're going to get through this. We love you. And take care, and we'll talk to you next time.